Hello everybody, I'm Dave Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Lorcana, Not the Meta, where I build decks and look at decks that, well, aren't the most popular and may even be a little off the wall and probably not going to win you any tournaments if you're interested in competitive play. But if you're more of a casual player like me, you can still have a lot of fun with these decks and you still might get some kind of neat ideas from what I have here. Because there are some things that do touch upon the meta. And all that is more competitive play styles with a certain combination of cards. Alright, so let's take a look at what I got today. I don't have a particular name for this deck. I just guess you could call it cheap steel, maybe. Because I had a big steel deck that I did recently. And maybe we could call this cheap steel because everything in this is pretty cheap. Although I won't necessarily say it's all reliant on steel. There's a lot of sapphire in here. And as you can see, normally how I organize all my cards in these videos is I got lower cost cards here, I got higher cost cards here, and there definitely are not very many higher cost cards, and this is predominantly dominated by lower cost cards. I guess I could almost call this triple S. Speedy, Sapphire, and Steel. We can call this triple S. Speedy, Sapphire, and Steel, because that's really kind of what I'm going for with this deck. I was kind of inspired by how good my 61 run deck went, where everything was 3 cost or less, and most of my characters quested for 2 lore, and I really like that. And I thought, well, maybe can I take it down one more notch and just do 1 2 cost? Is it too weak? I don't know. I played it a few times, but I don't think I've played it enough to give it a full shake and really see if it works or not. But the couple times I've played with it, I've been intrigued, and it does work because there's a lot of that sapphire element in here. But let's go ahead and take a look at it. You can see what I'm talking about. So first we get all my 1 cost cards. So for 1 inkable, Captain Hook, he's a 1/2, quest for 1, Challenger 2. I like Captain Hook. A lot of people use him. When you challenge with him, he's hitting for 3. Take out most characters, 1 go. You don't need any extra support from anybody else or any extra additional direct damage spells. And I have 3 Captain Hooks. I got some owls. Just because I haven't used Owl, there's a lot of other cards I could use the same cards over and over again, but you know, if it's a 1/2/2, kind of doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to use Owl, 1 cost inkable, 2/2, quest for 1 lore, and a 2/2 is again a nice solid creature out the gate just to get things going. Nothing to hide, 1 cost inkable. This is an action. Each opponent reveals their hand, which is nice to see what's coming up so you can kind of prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, or may even guide what you play in the next couple turns. Draw a card. I like it because at least I'm getting cards in hand. Even though I get this card out, I can ink it if I have to, but it's nice. Gives me some more options in my hand. Develop your brain. Again, this is one of those where I think is a must. Nothing to hide is fine, but I would happily get rid of these in favor of something else that might help my deck run good. But Develop Your Brain is definitely, if I'm playing Sapphire, I'm always going to have these in my deck. 1 cost inkable, and it's an action. I get to look at the top 2 cards of my deck, put 1 in my hand and the other on the bottom of the deck. Again, I always like to have options. Taking 2 cards off the top of my library, way better than just being forced into only having 1. So you definitely always want to do that. I mean, don't get me wrong, drawing a card is great from Nothing to Hide, but giving you the choice of which card out of 2 to draw from Develop Your Brain for the same cost, even better. Man, if there's another color out there that does exactly what Develop Your Brain does later on in later expansions, ooh, that would be really nice, I think. So an item here, this particular deck is item heavy. This is the Magic Golden Flower. It's 1 cost inkable, and I can banish this item, remove it to 3 damage from chosen character. I'm not quite as worried about that, but it is, for 1, it is a nice one to put out in case I do have to take a little bit of damage, even if it's 1 or 2 points off of another character to let them live. But mostly that is there so I can use other cards to help win the game. Like I'm going to come to Judy Hopps pretty soon, and I could use her to banish that to draw a card. And I think I've got a couple other cards that work off of having items. Last Cannon, 1 cost inkable. It's an item. For 1, I can banish this item. Chosen character gains Challenger 3 this turn, and they get +3 to their willpower while challenging. And I tell you, this card is actually, I think, kind of nice because there's a lot of resist stuff out there, and it's kind of hard to get up resist get up past that. Even a character with resist 1 can be very difficult to whittle down, especially if you have a lot of weaker characters in your deck. So this right there can really help get past that. Or if they have mouse armor, that adds another +1 resist. So this can really help your characters kind of break through that resist ability. And here I've got 4 last cannons because I think they're cool and I think there's a lot of potential there. So giving it a shot, see what I can do. Popsicle. 1 cost inkable item. When I play this item, you may draw a card, banish this item, remove up to 2 damage from the chosen character. Again, this is a really great card. If you're playing Sapphire, you have to have, I feel you have to have Develop Your Brain and Popsicle. Popsicle is definitely meta. If you're not playing Popsicle, then you're probably doing it wrong. Now, it doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean you're going to have a bad time if you don't play Popsicle. But it is definitely one of those cards that, man, it doesn't matter what level player you're at. You should probably be using it because it is good. And you can remove damage from one of your characters, too. But again, if you don't want to play it, don't. So 2 cost. Here we go. Pick a fight. I was intrigued by this card. I've seen it in my my commons and uncommons. I thought, you know, I think I really want to use this card. This could be advantageous. And any card in the right circumstance can be very advantageous to you. It can also be a detriment. This card in my hand at the wrong time, even though it's only a 2 cost, it's uninkable. You know, it might be the wrong time for the card. It might not matter that the chosen character can challenge ready characters this turn, which is exactly what this action card can do. But maybe I need to ink this card, and it's the only card in my hand. I could be stuck out in the wind just because of this 1 card. Or it could be too little too late later on in the game. But I do like being able to get the drop on ready characters, especially if they're particularly larger characters, like, I don't know, Prince Charming, who can quest for 3, or someone lays out a bell. Again, good card to have so you can kind of get the jump on those characters. Or if your opponent has characters with ward, and they're like, well, I'm just going to keep this, I'm not going to exert this character to quest them, and I'm just going to keep them right here, and I've got wards, so I'm not worried about you zapping them with, say, you know, cannons or something else, or Robin Hood. But pick the fight, gets right around that. And I've got 3 of those. And speaking of direct damage, I've got Robin Hood. 2 cost uninkable, but he's a 1/3, quest for 1 lore. If I exert him, I can deal 1 damage to chosen character. And I finally found a place with Robin Hood in this particular deck because I got 4. It's designed for low cost cards. And Robin Hood is definitely one of those cards that I want in there so I can use them. Although I have a tendency to use Robin Hood, to cast him as soon as I have him. But a lot of times I think it's almost better to keep 2 in my hand and then play them both at the same time, which gives me a little bit more flexibility and maybe might throw off my opponent just a little bit more. Now, generally, if you have a good card, you should play it right away. But occasionally, it might be best to hold back a little bit and play more cards at once than every single card every time you get it. It just really depends on your play style and what happens to be happening during the game. Next up, I've got Aladdin. He's a 2 cost inkable. He's a 2/1, and he quests for 2 lore. He's a pretty good character. I like him. Quest for 2 lore. Man, he's super cheap. Jafar, he's a 2 cost inkable. 3/2. Again, if he challenges somebody else, he can easily take him out. Most characters out. And he quest for 1 lore, plus during my turn, he gains evasive. And I happen to have this card in this deck when I was playing my opponent, who had many, many, many evasive characters, but I didn't get him because I only have 1 on my deck. I thought I had a few more, but too little too late, you know. Huntsman, he's a 2 cost inkable. He's a 1/1, quest for 2. Whenever this character quests, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. I got old Phil, 2 cost inkable. He's a 3/1, quest for 1 lore, and support. Whenever this character quests, you may add their willpower to a chosen character's willpower this turn. So Robin Hood, who's only 1/3, if I've got Robin Hood and Phil out there, I quest with 1 for Phil, I can take that 3 after Robin Hood. Now he's a 4/3, and he can take down a large number of characters doing that much damage. But he actually has to swing. He can't just deal 1 damage. And I've got 4 Phil, because if I'm playing Phil, I'm playing 4 of them. Basil, he's a 2 cost inkable. He's a 2/2. He quests for 1 lore, and just like Phil, he has support, so he gives his willpower to somebody else. So he could make Robin, he could add his willpower to Robin, make Robin a 2/3. This next action card is a 2-cost inkable. Always wanted to use this card. It's called Charge. And the chosen character gains Challenger 2 and Resist 2 this turn. So not only do they get +2 willpower when they're challenging, but the damage dealt to them is reduced by 2. So very nice for saving some of your characters. If you want to challenge somebody, but you don't want to lose that character, well, Charge is where it's at. And I go ahead and I just play 4 of them. I got one as a cold foil. Cruella de Vil, 3/2, 2-cost inkable, 1 lore. During my turn, this character gains Evasive. Again, nice to be able to hit creatures with Evasive. So last out of my 2-cost are Beast Mirror. I've got a playset of them. It's an item, and for 3, so if I exert this card and pay 3, if I have no cards in my hand, I draw a card. And what's neat is you think, oh man, why would you have 4 of them? It seems like a waste. Well, not really, because if I don't have any cards in my hand and I pay 3, I draw a card, and then if I can play it, I do. And then if I still have enough left to do another mirror, well then I can do it again because my hand's empty because I played that card, so I can do it again. Plus, I have multiple, so if I say get Judy Hopps out here, and this is the artifact, this is the only item I have in play. Listen to me, artifact, sounds like I'm playing Magic still. Which is a fun game, by the way. It is really good. But then, having multiple copies means I can get rid of this card for somebody else's effect and still have these other cards to use. That's why it's nice to have multiples of something in your deck. All right, coming up now, we have all my 3-cost cards. 3-cost uninkable, Launch. It's an action card. Banish chosen item of yours to deal 5 damage to chosen character. Very powerful. Nice to help get around resist. And I've got I got 3 of those. I thought I had 3 of those. And then here's my Judy Hopps. 3-cost inkable, 2/3. Questing for 2. When you play this character, you may banish chosen item, and its player draws a card. Now remember, this says you may banish chosen item. Its player draws a card. So everybody uses it to play Popsicle, play Judy Hopps, because you play Popsicle, draw a card. You play Judy Hopps, you destroy Popsicle, you draw a card. Everybody wants to use it for themselves, but remember, this says when you play this character, you may banish chosen item. So if your opponent isn't very item heavy and they lay something out, like I don't know, Fishbone Quill, you could use Judy Hopps to destroy that item, and then sure they get to draw a card from it, but they still got to wait till next turn to play it anyways. And if it's an item, well, oh well. If it's an action, oh well. If it's a character, that character's going to have to dry. Odds are good. So remember, with Judy Hopps, you are not just banishing your own item. You can choose any item in play on the field, yours or your opponent's. So this is a very important distinction. Most people always use it for themselves, for their advantage, but this is a good form of denial for your opponent. So keep that in mind. Judy doesn't just help you, she can terrorize your opponent. All right, let's see what I got. For 4, everything's pretty cheap in here, and I only have 4 of Hiram Flaversham. He's a 1/6. He's inkable for 4, 1/6, quest for 1, and whenever I play this character, and whenever he quests, I can banish an item to draw 2 cards. I can banish one of my items, so he's not as flexible as Judy, but he can still banish one of your items in order to draw 2 cards. So play Popsicle, draw a card. Hiram comes into play. Banish Popsicle, draw 2 cards now instead of just 1 with Judy. And then whenever he quests, you can do the same thing. So this deck needs to be item heavy. In order to do what I want to do, to get draw power and to destroy my opponent's characters, I don't have anything else that affects my items except for Judy, Launch, and Hiram Flaversham. Oh, I say that 3 times real fast. All right, so anyways, the last card, Whole New World, 5-cost, uninkable, but that's okay because with this deck, you have no problem getting ink out because most of it's inkable. And then Also, too, all your stuff's pretty expensive except for Hiram's, the highest cost one. And to me, Judy Hop's kind of mid-range, so you're not worried about it. You're not really taxing yourself heavily by having this one expensive unequal card in your hand because it's so useful. Each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. Man, I will happily give my opponent 7 cards to replenish my hand, and especially when it's all inexpensive. By the time I can cast this, I can cast another Popsicle, I can cast Judy, get some cards, I can cast another item, and then I still get the ink on top of that. So, my options are kind of pretty decent with this deck, and I like it so far. I think there's some additional tweaking I'm going to want to do. Curious how the new set's going to add to this, and I'm not looking at any spoilers or anything like that. When I look at cards, I look at it when I get them versus spoilers. It's just nice to have them in my hand already, and you never know, there might be some last-minute corrections and fixes they might do on a spoiler list. So they might not be quite as advertised when the cards come out. But anyways, this is pretty much it. This is my Triple S, my Speedy, Sapphire, and Steel deck. So I hope this maybe hopefully gave you some ideas. Maybe you saw some cards you haven't seen before. And at any rate, I hope you had a good time watching this video. And I do enjoy making these videos. I'm having a really good time doing it. And man, as long as you love what you're doing, it really kind of doesn't matter what you're doing. As long as you don't hurt nobody and just have a good time and share it with your friends. All right. Well, I think that's it for right now. My name's David Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild. Thanking you for watching this episode of Lorcana, Not the Meta. And telling you to stay safe, play great games, and I'll see you real soon.